Phil and Mark, thanks for joining us on The View today. This is our first test pilot episode for VistaVu Solutions, where we're going to record a whole bunch of great content and series with experts like yourselves, talking about everything to do with ERPs and specifically the ERPs that we work with, which is SAP's Business One, Business by Design, and now S/4HANA. So we're really excited to have you guys here. Mark and Phil, can you guys just introduce yourselves? Phil, you want to start?
Yeah, Phil Kirkham. I'm the sales director for VistaVu. I'm responsible for the growth of the cloud business.
Awesome. And then Mark?
Yep, I am the, Mark Burt with VistaVu Solutions. I am the VP of Sales for Net New at SAP Business One, and been in this channel since 2004. So
I'm sure that's like, it seems like forever ago in some ways and not very long ago in others.
Yeah.
There's a lot of change in the industry, I bet. And in line with that, there's, one of the things that we hear about all the time is this idea about digital transformation and companies looking to transform, and like it's kind of a giant buzzword. It seems to me that's a big motivator for, big bucket umbrella motivator for people to look for solutions like an ERP. Is that true? Or is there more specific reasons that, Mark, let's start with you. Do you see specific reasons why people are looking for ERPs?
Yeah, that's a good question. Companies are out there, specifically the ones that I'm looking at anyway. A lot of the reasons that they may be looking is they may have an old homegrown system that there's no upgrade, there's no path for a new system. Maybe their current solution has been discontinued. A lot of inefficient operations, too many manual processes. We see that an awful lot, believe it or not, still in 2023. Some specific examples could be like inventory. The accuracy just does not match what's in the financials. They use Excel for all their reporting. I mean, Excel is the number one business reporting tool in the world, but it's static and it's based off of user entry, which we all know there's potential for inaccuracies there. And then, another reason is they change an executive team. Maybe a new partner came on board, a new CEO, new CFO, and they're pushing to change from their current system.
Mm-hmm. And Phil, by design and S4, it's slightly different kind of audience that you're seeing maybe than what Mark's seeing with Business One side of things. Are there different reasons that you see people reaching out to you for a solution?
It's not really about S4 or business by design. People don't really know what the content of the solutions are. So, why wouldn't you look at, some of the deepest solutions that are available in the marketplace? And why wouldn't you want a solution that's been built by a software company that's more than 50 years old, that has built, software solutions and processes that have existed since, time immemorial? All of the solutions that we sell, including B1, there is no difference in what they perform or how they perform it. It's somewhat about the scale of the business, the number of the transactions. There is no, you need by design because of this. You need business because of this. Obviously, the different solutions are more expensive than each other, but the value that they bring, to bear in an organization is immense. If I could tell you that you'd want business by design because it's infused in, artificial intelligence out the box, it's got robotic process automation out the box. I told you it collected your email for you, went through the email box, picked out anything that had got a invoice in it, and then uploaded it into business by design's, business intelligence section, or and then reads the data of that and matches it to your purchase order and your goods received now, or your service receipt now, and without any manual interaction. Then people think, well, it's a bit Star Wars, isn't it? But that's what it's doing. None of the competition that we have do that kind of capability. So why wouldn't you look at SAP?
So big, like kind of tying into what Mark was saying, a lot of it is the some of the benefits anyway, or the solutions that people are looking for is a lot about the automation kind of things. And with by design, you get a lot of that out of the box. If I got that right, is that fair?
All of the solutions you get, a lot of automation out of. I'd suggest that, a lot of people get into a position where they're using different tools and, we just need another person.
Mm-hmm.
Buying a software solution like, Business One, Business by Design, S/4HANA, NetSuite, any of those solutions. It's about breaking the link between the amount of revenue that we've got and the number of people that we employ. Can do 3 people's job because I've got automation and a really nice process that gets ticked off by different people across the organization. Then why do I need 55 accountants?
So part of it's the efficiency kind of thing, and redundancy in some of the roles, maybe.
Yeah.
You mentioned
employ people, Mark. Really hard to employ people in today's marketplace. There is an employment shortage, and recruiting those people is really difficult. And then paying them 50, 60, 70 grand a year in order to perform a role that I don't need. It don't make any sense. I mean, if I can free up 3 people in my business, I can get them to do other stuff that's more important. Give me the information to make some decisions on.
That's interesting. I'm going to come back to the decision-making thing in a minute. But another thing you mentioned, Phil, Amir, I'll come back to you, and then Mark we'll jump back to you after Phil. But you mentioned NetSuite. So, there are a lot of ERPs on the market, all kinds. And it seems to me like there's almost one for every industry, and the way that people position the product and all that kind of stuff. How do why should people think about, and you kind of touched on this a little bit before, Phil, but why should people put SAP at the top of their list?
Maybe it shouldn't be at the top of the list. Maybe it should just be on the list,
Right.
I always think that, if I was running a company again, then, for me, the most important thing is, it's about properly rounded processes. It's about having depth and breadth in your software solution. It's about not being ripped off by your supplier. We're talking NetSuite. I think NetSuite, from what I've seen on, in the research that I've done, it's an amazing software solution. Arguably, it's been sold into more organizations. People like Resolv I'll tell you that NetSuite's a really powerful tool, but it's a bit, it's a fantastic core of financial credibility, and then they've got these little bits that have been developed by other organizations, from what I understand, that sit around the edge, and they're not tied together. They don't share the same architecture. They don't share the same vision. When you were starting to write this cloud solution, started writing by design, again, Rainer Zinau will tell you that he started that maybe 10 years too early because the market wasn't particularly ready for it. But they wrote it with a single view in mind, with a single, with many types of business. So, it's built on configurator. It means we can get there quicker. But not only can we get there quicker, we can develop and deliver way more power for the same price. And, that's why by design should be on your list. By design should be on your list. If you think about, going back to my school days, when you get your school pudding and it's got a nice piece of sponge cake, treacle sponge for me, and then you put custard on it. Actually, by design, if you look at the custard, goes all the way to the bottom, not just the thin layer at the top.
That's a great analogy.
You kind of lost me, but I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
I've never had the custard, but sounds good.
I've not seen a treacle sponge while I've been living in Canada, so probably need to sort that out. But,
Mark,
talking about the thick layer at the top, it's the bit we don't, it's you need
it kind of permeates through the whole organization. Yeah, I get you. Mark, from your end, what having 20, is that right? Did I do the math right?
Yeah.
2004, you said 20 years working with these products, and I'm sure you've seen all kinds of software systems come and go. Why, if I asked you why you should put SAP at the top of your list, how would you reply to that?
Well, just to kind of dovetail with what Phil said, I mean, SAP's been in business creating ERP systems since 1956 or 72, excuse me. And, if I were sitting in the shoes of trying to evaluate what's out there, and with the online search and research capabilities that are available, I mean, the questions that come to mind are, how long has the provider been in business? And the most important one is, even though they've been in business, do they even have a roadmap? And how long, if they do, how long does it go out there? With so many different variations out there, is it user friendly and is it flexible? And can you operate it yourself, or do you have to hire somebody out? And then, certainly, from an industry perspective, what are the references? Do you have references in, wholesale distribution and manufacturing and job shops and things of that nature? And then, believe it or not, still today, from a deployment perspective, is it on premise? Is it cloud? Is it hosted? Do you have various ways you can deploy the software? And that's what I would look at, first and foremost. And obviously the functionality's got to fit, as I mentioned earlier about references, it's got to fit with what you do. So
I think it's really important, Mark. There's another key thing. Buy from people that you like, people that you want to work with, because a relationship that you have with your software supplier is going to probably outlast your marriage.
Well, especially with something like this too, where it's like you're saying, it's embedded throughout the whole organization. It's not something you just like rip out one day and replace the next, right?
Well, it's an investment that when you make this investment, the one thing you do not want to do is have to do it again in another 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
right.
It should be a long-term business investment. And that's why the roadmap, that's why the team that you're working with, the provider that you're working with, it is very important to have a strong relationship with them.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, you've got a lot of people. I'm relatively new to this industry, ERP industry, and SaaS in general. But a lot of the people that we talk to, that you guys talk to, aren't new to ERPs, and so a lot of them are switching from something else because the scenario comes up where software is expired or has run its lifespan and it's being sunsetted and that kind of thing, or they just had a problem with a partner, or there's it's not meeting the current needs because they've grown too much. So when people were placing an ERP and they come to you guys, what kinds of things do you think they often ask about, or do you think they should consider?
Most people want to know, how much is it going to cost? How likely am I going to be successful? People want to understand the risk of making a decision and making a bad decision. So from that perspective, it's really difficult. So again, it comes back to the people. I don't know whether I'm particularly trustworthy, but I'll give you the honest truth. But it's really important that you work with people who've got a successful track record, that have a book full of quotes or references that you can go to. But on top of that, maybe experiencing the market that you exist in. So yesterday is a perfect example. I was in a place in Canada, north of Calgary, and we had a presentation to a utility business, and I was a bit concerned that maybe we were in a business that we didn't know a lot about. But I reached out to a couple of my colleagues, and wow, we've got this experience, Phil. And he talks about 25 different businesses that he'd implemented in, and when the customer asked if we could do utility billing in business by design, I was about to say probably not. We should probably look at other stuff. It was like, yeah, absolutely. We this, and this, and whilst that's deep configuration, we could achieve it. What we couldn't achieve is deep configuration for 100,000 customers or 1 million customers using business by design. But there are other solutions in our kit. that can do that. And I think that's the answer. You know, it was about experience and having the right people to do the right job, but
Right.
before.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, industry experience and references are extremely important when looking at an ERP. So,
especially if you're switching.
yes.
You know, it's about, you know, choosing the right tools for the right job. But, you know, I was surprised that he answered it in the way that he answered it. And he said, you know, back in, you know, I don't know what year it was, you know, say back in 2010, when we were first asked this job, you know, how we would build an industry billing solution, you know, for 1 million customers, then it wasn't about printing out all of this capability. It was about creating a file and then sending it to somebody to print it for you. And I was like, never thought about that before. And no, that's quite different to what you need to do. You know, actually they're providing data and then somebody else is sticking the data on the page. Maybe we can do it.
Interesting. One thing I want to ask about, Mark, like we've got, Phil, you just mentioned the electrical, sorry, what was the industry again? The electricity supply?
Yeah, utility
Supplier?
business.
Yeah, utility.
Water, gas. Just
so we've had experience in that. And I just, Mark, wanted to ask you about, we've got a product called Resolv, and I know you've been involved in Resolv a lot, which is really focused on warehouse and warehouses, I should say, supply chain around that, in and out of the organization. Can you talk a little bit about the experience that we have in general with that type of business setting?
Sure. Resolv was built probably 10 years ago now by one of the companies that VistaVu acquired, Achieve It Solutions. And it was built at a time when they were kind of forward thinking. I'll give Tim Singleton and Daryl Goodman and the rest of that team credit because they actually developed those products within the service layer. And where that's important is that it uses all the native Business One tables and fields. So many times if you've got to have an add-on with a solution, it doesn't matter whose it is, sometimes that add-on will go and have a separate database and it's syncing back up with your main ERP. And that's obviously not the most ideal way to get information back and forth because you always run the risk of that integration failing. So using our solutions, you don't have that issue because it uses all of native Business One tables and fields.
And just, is it only for Business One, the Resolv add-on?
Yeah,
we're working with Business by Design also, and Phil can probably comment on that on some of the others. But you know, from my perspective, what I see a lot in the Business One space is obviously WMS, the warehouse management solution, freight management, EDI, container management, order reservations. Those are the ones that we see the most of. And once we go through with a demo process, most existing clients that don't have it will select it. And those that are new to the process, we certainly will bring that up and during the discovery process to find out what their business needs are, because many times it extends beyond the core ERP. Most of the ERP solutions out now, probably 80% of what they need is in the core solution. That last 20% is where all the configuration, customization, usability, and reporting is what has to be configured. And that's where a pretty significant amount of your cost is, because you're now trying to configure that system to where it meets your business requirements.
Right.
Not all solutions, obviously. You know, we've got some solutions there, Mark, that meet every requirement almost out of the box. You know, infused with AI, infused with robotic processes.
Yeah.
More modern, maybe. I don't know.
So speaking of, between Business One, I know there's sort of two offerings. Originally, it was an on-prem solution for most people, and then they built it to go on cloud. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, by design was really cloud from birth.
Yes.
It sounds like S4 is kind of that way as well. Can you guys just kind of walk me through, like, how do you pick between do I need an on-prem solution or do you need a cloud solution?
There's it's simple today. Everybody needs cloud. And no, everybody needs cloud. Business One's now a solution that's it's being platformed for the cloud, so that it sits on the same platform as Business One, Business by Design, and HANA Cloud. And
that's right.
It needs to be available on the cloud, on Azure, on AWS, in SAP. Everything needs to be available on the cloud because of the fact that people can't afford to go and buy a bit of tin and stick it in the corner, because the easiest way for me to get into your system and your business and start destroying it is to sit in your car park and use your Wi-Fi, probably your guest Wi-Fi, identify a couple of databases and delete them, or worse than that, deploy some ransomware and then phone you up and say I need 10,000 euros.
Yeah, and Phil's exactly right. I mean, from an on-premise perspective, especially small companies, it's a pretty large expense to maintain that on-premise. You either have to hire an IT person or you have to hire an outside firm to manage your IT infrastructure. And servers, with the way server technology is today, you'd have to buy a $25,000, $30,000 server, every 3 to 4 years, and then you have to worry about, as Phil talked about, obviously you have to have antivirus, you have to have ransomware protections. You have to lock it down to where, outside entities can't get in, and your inside entities, your users, can't go to websites or links that, have people to shut you down.
You're reliant on one person in your organization to be cleverer than the guy who's trying to get in. You're not there all the time, Mark. It's a real problem. Somebody comes to you. Oh, come just get your Wi-Fi code. And then 3 weeks later, they sell your Wi-Fi code to some lunatic who kills your business.
The one key factor about cloud solutions is, Mark, is that they offer backup on a very regular basis. So should you get hit, you may only be looking at a day or 7 days, or maybe at most 30 days that you have to make up. Whereas if you get hit in an on-prem environment, they could take you down and you may not ever get back up. So,
there are terrible incidents that happen, tsunamis. What happens if the database, all of your business, all of your records
gets wiped away in an accident or something?
It's wiped.
Yeah.
Gone.
And your IT guy may have had something come up and he forgot to do the backup, or he forgot to go take it off site.
When a tsunami hits, the guy who's done the backup and did everything correct, still gets washed away because the tsunami went, through his house as well as the office that's, 400 meters away, or a mile away. It's terrible.
In terms of the cloud, is there? I know, probably going back a few years, and I don't know if this is still true, but it seems to me there is like an apprehension from some types of businesses, maybe more than others, to move to the cloud because of risk of security and some of the things you were talking, like cyber attack and all that. Is that still a major concern, or is there a lot of solutions that have been figured out for that?
Not anymore. I think Salesforce.com, as soon as you're going to put your customers into the marketplace, and then HR people, tools like Bamboo HR, you got your people in the cloud.
Right.
People are like, really?
Yeah.
Why won't I put my business in the cloud as well? So
10, 12 years ago, when CIOs, they really felt like they needed to own their own data and have it on site. And the proliferation of virus software and ransomware has kind of cured a lot of that. So they understand the value of having a cloud application.
It changed. I think it changed in about 2015. By 2018, I was not answering in RFPs why cloud's better. As an example, how much money do you think SAP spend on protecting their data centers? How much money could VistaVu spend on protecting their servers? Right.
Yeah.
It's not an insignificant comparison. We turn over 30 million. Could we afford to spend $1 billion a year? No.
Not on regular basis. Not on a regular basis.
Can SAP? Yeah. Do AWS? Yeah. Do Microsoft? Yeah. That's why cloud's important. People have never got into an SAP data center and stolen somebody's data. And the fines today are not small. If somebody understands and takes credit card data, or somebody understands on how and where to find a list of customers, the authorities levy significant fines.
Right.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's say I'm do a little role play. Let's say I'm a COO at an organization, and I'm thinking about, I'm leading a buying team, a group of decision makers of colleagues, trying to figure out which product, ERP product, not necessarily SAP, but which ERP product is right for me. What kinds of questions should I be asking my colleagues to begin with, like in order to try and get the right? Because you talked about it, Phil, with the customer. I still have that visual in my head. I mean, it really permeates throughout the whole organization. So surely you need to have some kind of collaboration and collective decision-making alignment with the other department heads. Is there specific things that people should be, asking each other within their groups?
Yeah, my view. I'm an accountant by profession from 20 years ago. I wasn't very good at it, but what I'd recommend is you follow the money. So start. What do we sell? What do we buy? What do we deliver? What service do we need to give? How do we improve that? What is the ideal customer experience? And they're the kind of things that you need to really look at. So if I'm a golf shop, what's the most important thing of a golf shop? Or if I'm a golf club, what's the most important thing? Making sure that the grass is cut properly, making sure that the greens are really nice and flat, and making sure that I sell equipment and the food and breakfast and drinks and alcohol are all well managed and delivered to keep my customers and members happy. But how do you manage all of that together in a single system? You can't do it in just finance. I tried to run a golf club once, and again, you did a really good job of it. Some really famous people, but actually keeping the grass cut was the most important thing. And the guy who was really in charge was the greenkeeper.
Right.
Because the greenkeeper came into my office to make sure that he got paid. He was bigger than me. He had thicker hands than me. And, I need to make sure he got paid. They're the kind of things that you need to really be concerned about.
That's right. And then, it is along that same line, you want to know somebody that's been in the golf course business, has that software that could solve those problems. That's what you look at.
Absolutely.
And then what's the reputation of the company that's providing that? And again, I mentioned this earlier, are they in business? Are they going to stay in business? Do they have a roadmap? The management team, relationships, all those come into play.
Because that's that marriage thing where you're not just picking the ERP, you're also picking the partner.
Right.
I run my business on Sage Line 50. But if one of my customers forgot to pay his fees, the last thing he really needed me was chasing him around the golf club or around the golf course on a buggy. Hey, you owe me some money. Asking him to walk off or give me a check there and then. But it was it's important.
Yeah, when it comes to that group of people picking an ERP, and Mark, you mentioned this before, where a lot of it is out of the box, and it's really that last 20% that takes the bigger chunk of scope and the time and the money, that kind of thing. So I've seen this kind of come up a lot where in my research where people are concerned about the price, and they feel, it seems, there's a general consensus of what's the real cost. Like, there's the upfront cost of what you're showing me now, but what's it really going to cost me? Is there a way to better understand the real cost of it, of not just the implementation, but the long-term investment? Like, is it add-on? I need this add-on. I need this add-on. Oh, you got to upgrade here. And is there a better way to estimate that?
Well, from when customers ask me how much it's going to cost, I always reply back with the rules of thumb I've learned having been in this business so long. And cloud solutions now, 1 or 2% of your annual revenue is what you should budget. And within that budget, that should also include internal resources, because you're going to have to now take care of these employees that will be working 2 jobs. They'll be learning a new system as well as working on an old system. And there's a cost associated with that as well. On top of that, if they're coming from a solution like QuickBooks, I always suggest to customers that go hire somebody that can do your AR and AP and allow your new business owners or the users to learn the new system. I said you'll get up quicker and you won't be so stressed out. It'll be a little bit of an expense there, but that's something that you need to budget for. And I see Phil's laughing about that because he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Good advice. Yeah, very good advice. From my perspective, we know how much it's going to cost to implement, and I'm never scared to tell you. The answer is it's expensive, but nowhere near as expensive as you just would assume that SAP is going to cost. We're not selling big deployments of SAP. PwC and Deloitte and Accenture do those implementations. SAP software is relatively inexpensive. It's fitting it to your organization. When we spend time talking to SAP today, SAP are becoming a customer-centric organization. I went to FCOM, which is not FCOM anymore. It's CSCOM, Customer Success Kickoff Meeting. And I was like, it talks about it, but they're talking about fit to standard. So use standard processes where you can, adjust them only if you need to. How many organizations are really different from an operational perspective to each other? A utility company is a utility company, big or small, they've got the same kind of problems. A small company can't afford a big deployment of the biggest solution, so they have to make do. Look at integration to other best of breed solutions. It makes absolute sense in today's world to connect best HR solution that has all of the feature functionality that you need to best ERP solution. And if you can bring that together so that I add a new employee in my HR solution because I've gone through a recruitment process. I need to create an employee based on some rules, based on some lookups that I've done, some synchronization tools, that employee in my ERP. It's so easy today.
And Mark, along those lines, an important phase in here is when you get ready to select the process or select the ERP provider, maybe you've already signed, is that not only the discovery, but the blueprint process. And if you want to really stick to your budget, stick to the blueprint. Go through with the statement of work. And if you've got to do things that have to be added in or change orders, save those until after go live. Because the business blueprint is so important. If you stick to that, you'll hit your budget targets and you'll hit your go live targets. And then after that, you can take a look at what additional functionality you may need, what additional reports you may need, and things of that nature.
I imagine the pre-planning to get that blueprint in place is probably really important, because that's where you can do a lot of that thrashing to figure out like what's really important, what's not important,
right?
And then build that list out.
Right. I always subscribe to crawl, walk, run, and if you follow those mantras, go live with your minimum viable option.
Right.
Adding more functionality as you go through that, next stage. Make sure you're live for 3 months, add some more functionality. Make sure, live for another 3 months on this new, bigger piece, add some more functionality. Continuous changes, what we do. But it gets you live, and it's a much more comfortable approach than big bang.
Hey, we only have a couple of minutes left. And I appreciate your time. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you about. There's this really great resource that I just found through SAP's training center, and it talked about the buyer's psychological behavior, like state through different phases of the buyer's journey. one of them, and risk especially, was like it starts out really low because you don't have to do anything. You don't need to make a decision. But then as you get closer and closer to the decision, your risk level goes up a lot. So I imagine from a buyer's perspective, there's probably things you guys have seen and advice and tips maybe that you could offer is what I'm looking for. And how do you mitigate that risk when you get close to the moment so that you don't just go, you know what, we're just going to stick with your guy. I just can't, you know what I mean?
Well, there's risk in not doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing, is the reason they're talking to us is because they know there's risk. Maybe they're something as simple as your accounts receivable. Maybe your receivables, your DSOs are out there at 170 days. Well, that's going to prevent you from getting money to run the other parts of your business. Inventory valuations are another big risk out there, or things that you can measure that. And Phil, having run a business and been an accountant, he knows that firsthand. So there's always risk out there, and that's why customers are talking to us, is to mitigate that risk. Yeah, there's risk, when you're doing an implementation, but hopefully your own due diligence, things that we talked about earlier, would help mitigate that risk as far as the ERP provider that you select.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes back to the people again. Me, buy from people you trust and you like. Yeah. When you walk into a bar, or you're now on Tinder or Bumble, I think the other ones are called. There's thousands of them, but you're looking for people that you like. You're not looking for somebody who fits your entire requirement. But if you're going to get married without meeting them, it's a big risk. So make sure that the people that you're buying from are really key, and you trust them to be able to do what they say they're going to do. If you think it's easy to implement business by design and you've never done it before, if you think it's easy to implement business one and you've never done it before, make sure they've got references. Do not buy from those kind of people that are just entering the marketplace, even if they claim that we can do anything. It's not the case. Buy from people that have got experience, you like them, and you're willing to live with them for the next 10 to 15 years.
Right. And the term that we've heard over the years is, we don't sell vaporware anymore. So it's real. You can put a finger on it. We've got a successful track record to back it up.
I'm not sure whether you can put a finger on it. It's software.
On your monitor.
Yeah, and coming back to that blueprint you were talking about, Mark, I imagine that's also a huge risk mitigation tool for implementation. And there's a whole bunch of change management things and other components that I'm sure come after the implementation. But I imagine like that, picking the right people, having a blueprint, going with a trusted provider that has references are probably three big things to help you mitigate that.
Yeah. And then after go live, does the provider you selected, what kind of support do they have? What kind of support do they offer? What kind of training do they offer? All of those come into play during the decision-making process, within the sales process itself.
That's a bit, you're with me for 15 years. Make sure that you're going to comfortable to be with me for 15 years or, your life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be here in 15 years.
But SAP will be.
Yeah, but make sure that the company that you're working with and the investments that you're making, they'll be here in 15 years.
Right. That's correct.
I think Jory, the guy who owns this company, is only, well, we all own the company actually, but Jory, the CEO, he's only 50, so he might be here in 15 years.
He may. Well, yeah, that's right. He may be.
Anyway, I appreciate all your time, guys, and the insights and the thoughts on all this. This has been really interesting for me to learn from you, and I'm sure this is great information for a lot of other people too, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
And
you too.